like mums are absolutely amazing. I'm a massive fan of mums. But I think there's a cat just trying to crawl over me. But there's so many tiny little intricate details that you guys have to think about constantly, and it's like it's kind of no wonder so many women have anxiety and depression. And I was looking up this morning, I think it's like 15 out of 100 women that have a baby will experience postnatal depression and anxiety. And that's a fact that I imagine when you're going through it, you kind of feel like, oh no, it's just me, and it's just like, I can't do this. And it's so not. It's like so many women, and it's so understandable. And was that you, because you mentioned like, is there any other misconceptions that you can think about with postnatal anxiety and depression? Because you mentioned, you feel like if you say it out loud, people are going to be like, oh, she's a bad mum. Is that something, is there anything else that you kind of felt
I feel
like?
like a lot of the time, like if you kind of say like, oh, I'm just really not, like some people, like especially like in one of the groups that I go to, like we were all talking about, like playing with our babies, and some people are like, yeah, I just find it really boring, and it's just like, what else am I gonna do? Sometimes it's just like people are just like, oh my god, how can you say that? Like, that's your child, they need you to help you with their development. But sometimes it's just like, yeah, but you've been doing that all day long. It's okay to need that time just to do something for yourself, because if we don't kind of look after ourselves, then how are we supposed to look after them effectively? And somebody actually said to me the other day, it's not even just about looking after yourself so that you can look after them. It's that, we as mums, as we're human beings, we deserve to be happy and healthy and have our own time as well. I feel like when we have those times in the day when they're asleep, you're like, right, now let me quickly just grab something to eat and do some washing up, or put some clothes in the laundry, or tidy up the bathroom. We end up finding all those other things to do, and then we're like, oh, we never have time for ourselves. And it's just like, it's hard to actually be like, no, it's fine if the kitchen is a mess. It doesn't matter. I'm going to sit here and eat my lunch in peace. Like, for me in the beginning, I was constantly like, no, like I need to tidy up the kitchen. I need to make sure dinner is ready. Like my partner's going to come home. And like, I knew full well that he wasn't going to think when he got home, like, oh my God, babe, like the place is a mess. And why is dinner not being, I knew he wasn't going to think that, but it was more a conception from myself that it was like, well, I could do this before. Why can I not do it now? And it's like, well, you can't do it that much now, because now you have a small human being who literally depends on you for everything.
My kitchen's an absolute state right now, and I do not have a baby, so I have no excuse whatsoever. But it's just because that doesn't sound that fun to me. And so it's also, I wonder how much of like, obviously at one point women were kind of, we had to do those kinds of things. We were expected to have an absolutely pristine house in like the 1950s, everything pristine baby. Mum, like, what shouldn't be reading books and stuff. Mum should constantly just be working in the home. And it is work. It's unpaid labour. Looking after children and looking after a home, that's work. And in fact, it's much harder work than most other jobs. So and also in those jobs you get
I read something that somebody posted on Instagram the other day, and they said that basically, according to like the workload and the times and everything that mums have to do, they like put it into like this analyst thing of working out like how much someone should get paid according to their workload and times and everything else. And they were just like, if mums were to get paid, they'd basically be earning about 60 grand a year, which is the same as like an investment banker, because of the workload that you're doing and the times. And I was just like, yeah, that's so true.
We're now at a stage where, that stuff doesn't matter. Like, it really doesn't matter. And the only thing really that matters is mum, because baby most of the time is going to be fine. Mum is so important. And being, it's really, really impressive that you've also managed to get your anxiety in somewhat of your control, and being like, you know what, I might not be able to like go really far with my kid right now, but right now I can go for a walk for 5 minutes. I can get on the bus for a couple of stops. And that just keeps your confidence up, I think, as well. Being like, see, I can do it. I can do it with a baby. I think that's so important. Is there anything else that you feel could have helped you at that time? Or if somebody is listening right now that is going through that first kind of the first little bit of being a new mum and they're really struggling with their anxiety, what would you say to them?
I think I would just say to really just kind of just go with the flow and don't worry so much about, the housework and everything else and get bogged down with all of that. Just take the time for yourself and enjoy the time that you have with your little one, because it's so true that they say that, you only have a newborn for like 8 weeks, and after that they're just kind of like a young baby at that point. And it's like, just enjoy those times and make those memories and take lots of photos to kind of look back on, and just take that time for yourself. So I know everybody always says, oh, sleep when the baby is sleeping. I'm like, it doesn't always work. Just when they are asleep, just take that time to do something for yourself, even if it's just once a day. Just do something that you enjoy doing before having a baby, whether it was reading a book or doing some exercise or whatever it is, because I feel like I got bogged down so much with, well, she's asleep. Now I can get on and hoover and do these things. I don't know why I got all of that into my head, because to be honest, before I was pregnant, I never was that interested in making sure that the flat was pristine. It was like, oh, I'll do it when I've got time. Just felt like it was anxiety that was just like, you need to do this, because if people come over, like, they're going to be like, oh my God, it's such a mess. Like, can't you cope with having a baby? Because look at the state of your house. And it was just like, well, no, because I never felt that way. When you're having these feelings and you're not sure how to deal with them, it was like, flip it over to the other side. What would you say to a friend if they were telling you that this is how they were feeling? I feel like anxiety and kind of postnatal depression, it's not something that so many people talk about, because ever since I've kind of started sharing my journey on Instagram, and on my page, I've actually found that there's so many people, like in my friendship groups and in family, that have like, you know what, Jess, I actually really used to feel like that too. Like when I first, and I was just like, I never knew that. Like, I never was even aware that there's so many people that I actually know that actually had the same thing and just never kind of spoke out about it.
I wonder if there's some shame around it for mums, if there feels like, if I admit that, then I'm the one that's wrong, and feeling ashamed. And I think shame is one of those emotions that and guilt, those kind of emotions are just, we keep them inside and it makes us feel worse, and it develops into things like anxiety and depression when we keep all these emotions inside. So anyone that's listening and that's going through anything similar to Jessica, or anxiety and depression in general, don't be ashamed about it. It's so much, like I said, I think 15 in every 100 mums develop postnatal depression and anxiety. That's a lot of women. And the rest of them, I imagine, have bouts of anxiety and depression, even if they're not diagnosed. It's the biggest thing you can do as a human being is have another human being that you're responsible for. And I think, honestly, like I said, I'm a huge fan of mums. I think you're all amazing. I just think, wow, honestly, every time I see, especially a new mum, I'm like, wow, you've just given birth to a human being and you're still, I would milk that, Jessica, for the rest of my life. So, I gave birth 6 years ago, right?
Yeah, like literally, I actually had to do all of this and it was quite hard. But, it's just one of those things. And that's why I share all of those things on my page, because I'm just like, you know what, it's okay to go out, whether you go out and get the support from your friends or your family, or you choose to go and do it kind of professionally. Like, it's okay to do that, because I feel like it's going to be so much easier for you in the long run if you at least even just got the support of your family and your friends, whether you choose to kind of go to the doctors about it or not. But just letting people know how you're feeling and getting it out. And even just going down the professional route. Like when I spoke to my health visitor about it, she was brilliant. And she was just like, right, we're going to get you going down the path of, I'm going to set you up with a GP, and they can refer you for like, cognitive behavior therapy, or if you feel like you need to do counseling, and we're going to get you in with group sessions. And everything was just like really, really quick. 2 weeks after I first kind of mentioned about it, I was already booked in for like CBT sessions. And then we started like doing group sessions, like maybe a month later after that. And those I definitely I found so helpful, just finding a group of mums who were all dealing with the same thing. To me, it was just like to actually speak to other mums who were all going through the same thing was just really helpful, because I just felt like, you know what, it's okay to say these things, because all those other mums were like, oh my gosh, yes, I feel like I'm going through the same thing, and or had tips and ideas on it. And I was like, oh yeah, I never thought of that. Let me try that when I go home, because that could actually be helpful. Whereas sometimes talking to like some of my own friends who have had babies, sometimes I was just like, oh, I don't know if I want to say anything, because like they've managed it and never complained. But actually, speaking to one of my closest friends, she was just like, yeah, and she's like, I felt exactly the same. I never wanted to go out of the house. I never wanted to do anything, and I was just like, I never even knew that. And she was just like, yeah, she said, but sometimes for some people, they just don't feel like they can tell anybody, because, you know, you don't feel strong enough and you feel like people might judge you because of it. But I definitely would say to people, if you're feeling like that, definitely, even if it's just your friends and family and you don't want to kind of go down the professional route of talking to somebody like a doctor, just speak to your friends and family, because you'll actually probably get so much more support than you thought that you would. You might think in your head that you're going to get judged for it, but especially people that have had children and like your own parents, like I'm sure they will feel exactly the same, and they'll understand because they've been through it.
Totally, 100%. Talking is, and it's really great that you had that mums group as well. And I know that that could be a source of anxiety, is going along to one of these things at the beginning. But yeah, I've had friends that just swear by them. And yeah, thank you so much, Jessica. You've given so much insight into what it's like to be a new mum, and I think it could be really helpful for a lot of women.